Hey, what's up everybody? It's Amaya. So today's video is going to be a remake of a video I did a long time ago, and it is going to be a do's and don'ts with makeup. So I did a video like this a really long time ago. I want to say I should just watch it. It was March 26th of 2015. That was 2 years ago. Oh my god, 2 years ago. Wow. So a lot has changed in the beauty world. A lot has changed with my makeup, my style, and I kind of wanted to do a more in-depth slash realistic version because that one was more for like comedic purposes. Like I really did want to like show you guys the do's and don'ts of makeup, but I was also 15 and things have changed, like I said. So let's get right into it. So mistake number one is not doing your proper skincare before you put on your makeup. You have to think of putting makeup on as like painting a house or painting a wall or just a regular painting in general. You have to start with a beautiful foundation slash base. If you build a house and your foundation isn't sturdy, everything else on top is going to fall off. Basically the same with your makeup. If you don't prep your base or make a very nice strong base, everything else on top isn't going to work. Even for oily skin girls, you want to moisturize because that will actually keep your oil at bay. Dry skin girls, obviously our face is going to feel like crap if we don't moisturize. So just make sure you use your proper skincare and you also moisturize. Also applying some sort of lip balm if you plan on wearing a liquid lipstick later that day. So I'm going to apply a little bit of lip balm on this side. And I did wash my face, and I actually had to moisturize my whole face because I have such dry skin that I can't get away with like moisturizing just half my face. Okay, so number two is either not using a primer, using too much primer, or not using the right kind of primer. I feel like a lot of people are actually using primer now. I feel like a lot of people understand the benefits of it. I think there's still some people out there that don't use it, and if that works for them, then you go you. I feel like using the wrong kind of primer is actually a bigger mistake. People with dry skin using mattifying primers, people with oily skin using shiny primers, or just something that doesn't work with your skin type. My foolproof priming method is to actually use 2 primers. I know, it's a lot, but just hear me out. I like to use a pore filling primer on the center of my face and on my T-zone, anywhere where I have enlarged pores or anything where it could get oily. And then I like to use a illuminating primer on the rest of my face. Of course, if you're super oily and you don't want to use an illuminating primer, you don't have to. But I like to start out with something like the Benefit Professional, as you guys have seen in many of my videos. I just take a tiny little bit of this. I warm it up between my fingers, and then I just press this right here. I don't swirl it around or rub. I really press it into my pores so it gets all absorbed. And then I always go in with something like my Maybelline Magic Lumi. You guys know I love this stuff. It makes my foundation lay down so nicely, and it creates a nice glow. Another primer mistake, not letting your primer sink in. Primer is kind of like moisturizer. You need to let it sink in and absorb into your skin for it to really work properly. So I always put it on first and then I go in and do everything else. Okay, next let's go on to eyebrows. Eyebrows are a very personal thing. Everyone does theirs differently, but the number one mistake I see is just still filling them in too much. I see still a lot of people who just kind of block on their eyebrows or they really carve them out, or a lot of times it's just really blocky eyebrows that just don't look natural. I see a lot of people who say, you know, I've had lighter hair, then I dyed it darker, but my eyebrows are still light, so I'm just gonna draw on my dark eyebrows. You still have to do it naturally. If you just kind of block on your eyebrow product, it's just not gonna look natural no matter how you slice it. So I'm gonna start out with my good eyebrow. I'm gonna start out with an eyebrow pencil. This is how I always like to start. And then I like to draw on a little bit of a tail. I don't want to bring the tail straight down because that'll kind of make me look droopy and sad. So I kind of make it go out slightly, just following the natural shape of where my brow would go if it did continue. And then always, always, always brush out with a spoolie. If you do want to fill in the front of your brows, take nice light strokes and do up and down strokes like if you had actual hair growing there. So with my brows, I always like to go over with a pomade or a sort of brow gel, like a darker creamy brow product like this NYX brow gel that I'm using. I am going to carve out my brow because I do like to do that. I like to apply a little bit of concealer underneath to hide any growing hair. very rarely go over top of my brow. I like to leave the top part looking really natural. And then just to make sure everything is nice and set, I go in with a brow powder. Then I'm just going to go in and set with a little bit of a brow gel. So for this brow, I'm not going to brush through it with a spoolie. I'm just going to go straight in with my brow gel. I am going to go in with some concealer, and I'm going to use a shade that is pretty light. Okay, so now we're going to move on to eyeshadow. Mistake that I always see made with eyeshadow is not priming. I think a lot of people just don't think about it, or they forget about it, or they just go in with a concealer or something and they don't set it. So I'm going to be priming this eye with a little bit of primer, putting a little bit of concealer on top, and then setting it with a powder. And on this side, I'm just going to go in with a thick layer of concealer and not set it. So now we're going to go in. I'm going to be using the Jaclyn Hill palette. So on the dew side, I'm going to be going with this shade right here first. It's similar to what I would use as a bronzer. And I'm just going to take a big fluffy brush and just blend all of this in. So the look we're going to be creating today is a nice, warm, smoky eye. So say I just want to kind of go in with the smoky effect. I'm going to go straight in with this shade right here because it's nice and dark. So I'm just going to take a small brush and I'm really going to load that up with product. On this side, what I forgot to mention is I tapped my brush off to make sure there was as little product on there as possible. Also, can you guys see how this concealer is creasing? And I'm also going to kind of drag this downward, which I see actually happen a lot. Now I'm going to go in with this shade right here, which is right next to the shade that we just used. It's this one. It's just a little bit darker. Tapping off my brush again, as you can see there's little product on there. And same thing, starting in the outer corner, because that's where we want the most product. And then just kind of blending in to start to build up those colors. And then on this side, I'm just going to go straight in with this shade right here, this nice dark red shade. Now we're going to go in with this shade, which was the first shade that I used on the other eye. And I'm taking a smaller tapered brush. You always want to go from bigger brushes to smaller brushes. Tapping that off, and I'm just going to concentrate this on the outer corner. And then I'm actually going to switch over to this brush again to blend everything out. You always want to switch over to another cleaner brush when blending everything out. So as you can see, this is a nice seamless blend right here. If you wanted to add a little bit more color, you could certainly do that. You just want to pack on the color again, and then just blend everything out with that same fluffy brush. Now on this side, we're going to go in with this nice dark brown right here. And I'm going to take that same brush. I'm not going to switch brushes. Now we're going to go in with that red shade that we used as our second color. And I'm again tapping off that brush because I know this is a very pigmented shadow. And I'm going to put that on the lower outer corner again. Then I'm going in with that fluffy brush and blending everything out. Then I'm going to go in with that same warm brown from before, and on an even smaller brush I'm just going to apply this to the lower part of my eye to create that nice smoky effect. And then again, always going back in with a fluffier brush to blend it out. Now for black eyeshadow, I'm going to go in with this nice black from the Jaclyn Hill palette, of course. And I'm going to just put this on. A lot of times people want to create a nice cat eye effect, so they kind of concentrate all that product right here. I'm going to blend it up a little bit too high, so you just start to look kind of bruised at this point. For this side, I'm just going to take the black on a tiny little pencil brush and start to blend it into the outer corner, just applying a little bit at a time. Then I'm going to take that brush that I used the dark brown on and just start to kind of buff that out just a little bit. And then going in with this brush that I used before and blending it out a little bit more. I like using these brushes because they can get more precise. And then lastly, I'm going to be taking this brush and blending everything out. For my lid shade, I'm going to be using this nice rose gold sort of shade right here. There's a lot of mistakes you can make with shimmer lid shades. I feel like they're pretty easy to do, but I'm just going to pick up some on this brush. These shadows are better used with a finger, and I'm just going to apply this all over the eye. Knowing what kind of tool to use with your shadows is always the best too. So now I'm going to go in with my finger and I'm just going to apply this to my lid, and I'm stopping where we put those matte shades because I don't want to go over them. I want them to blend seamlessly. So to do that, I'm just going to take a brush that I had a little excess matte shadow on and just make sure everything is nice and blended together. So for falsies, I'm going to take a pair that are kind of unnatural looking and that don't really fit my eye too well, and I'm going to apply these to the don'ts side. I'm also not going to let my glue dry for very long, and I'm also going to kind of try to apply it with my finger. And you can also see that these are applied way too high up. They're like on my lid. So for this eye, I'm going to take a little bit of mascara and just apply a tiny bit. You don't want to apply too much. And then I'm going to take a pair of lashes that fit me really well. I'm going to apply some glue. I'm going to wait for these to dry. While I'm doing that, I'm going to apply some mascara onto my false lashes. And as you can see, you don't want to apply mascara to your actual falsies, like right on the tips, because this will make them look very unnatural. As you can see, they look like little spiders. It makes them clump together. So for this eye, I'm going to put them on to my eye. As you can see, they're already sort of formed to the shape that I want them. And then I'm going to take the end of the tweezers and push them upwards. Okay, so moving back to the face, you always want to clean up any excess shadow underneath your eye before you start your concealer. So on this side, I'm going to take a foundation. This is the LA Girl Pro Coverage Foundation. It works really well with my skin, and it's also the same shade as my skin. I will show you. It matches my neck and my body, as you can see, and I'm going to take a damp beauty sponge and I'm going to use that to bounce the makeup into my face. And I'm kind of staying away from this under eye area right here because I don't want things to get too cakey. So another big mistake I see people doing is not wetting their sponge if they're using them. I'm also going to take a foundation that's just a tiny bit too dark, not dramatically too dark, but just a tiny bit. And I'm going to go and squeeze this right onto my sponge. I'm going to use a lot too. And as you can see, this is my shade when I'm super tan, but it's not my shade right now. It's just a little bit too dark. So I'm going to go and I'm going to swipe this on. Also, a dry sponge absorbs way more product, resulting in you losing a lot of money. For concealer on this side, I do want a nice bright under eye, so I'm going to be using a concealer that's like, 2 shades lighter. And this one has a little bit of a yellow undertone because yellow undertones tend to brighten. On this side, however, I'm going to be going in with a shade that is way too light to be using by itself. I could totally use this as a brightening shade with this foundation if I want to make a nice bright under eye, but not by itself as a concealer. And I'm going to drag it way down, as a lot of people think you need to, which is not true. And I'm only going to apply it under the eye. As you can see, this kind of follows my natural shape. This just goes down way too low. So I'm going to go in with this sponge and I'm going to blend everything in with nice patting motions like so. So as you can see, this resulted in me having a really nice and bright under eye. Like, I look very awake. It's very bright and highlighted, but yet it's not too bright. Now I'm going to go in with this sponge, and I'm just again going to swipe. So for cream contouring, my favorite new tip is taking a concealer that's just a few shades darker than my foundation and applying it onto a small stippling brush like this, and then just stippling it on lightly. I feel like using a stipple brush really just makes everything look really nice and blended and seamless. On this side, I'm going to take a contour shade that I do use, but I'm going to take it and I'm really going to go in. I'm really going to apply this. And I'm going to go in with a brush and try to blend this out. Another mistake I actually see a lot is people really carving out their contour to make it look more natural, except they just end up looking like they have a line down their face. I'm going to be using a little bit of translucent powder to set under my eyes, and I'm going to make sure I have no creases in there first, and I'm just going to take a little bit of it and press it into that under eye area. Same thing with the chin and the nose, and a little bit on the forehead. And I'm just going to kind of take the sponge with a little bit of excess powder and just kind of pat it in everywhere else so everything blends seamlessly. I see a lot of people either not setting their concealer or setting it way too much with a lot of powder and really caking it all on there. And just not brushing it off. It just doesn't look natural. It looks too heavy. You know what I mean. I also see a lot of people taking a face powder that's very heavy duty and stamping that onto their face. For my bronzer, I'm going to be swirling my brush in, tapping it off, and just kind of lightly brushing it and stamping it onto my face. I'm going in kind of swirling motions like this, and as you can see, I'm trying to keep it as light and natural as possible. You can always put on more product, but it's really hard to take it off. But on this side, I'm going to be taking this powder that's just way too orange and dark, and I'm really going to get a lot of product on there on this nice stiff brush, and I'm going to contour. If you want to clean up a little bit under your bronzer slash contour, you can take a little bit of a lighter powder. I'm using a highlighting powder, and you're just going to lightly kind of brush it underneath. Nothing too crazy. On this side, however, I'm going to load up, and I'm just gonna pack it on. Blush is really up to your personal preference. I like to stay with neutral tones like this e.l.f. Duo, and I just like to kind of lightly brush this onto my cheeks for a nice bronzy look. If you like brighter blushes, you can definitely do those in moderation. On lighter skin, they look really pretty, and on darker skin, they look absolutely amazing. But something like this, it's just really nice and natural. It's just kind of my style, and it goes really well with this eye look. I could totally go for something that's a nice bright pink if I wanted to, but I just would make sure to apply it lightly and to apply it in this cheek area. I don't want to apply it right here or too far up. On this side, I'm going to be using a nice bright blush that I really do love using. It's a nice like pinky peach, but I'm really going to load up my brush and I'm going to apply it really close to the center of my face. For highlight on this side, I'm going to be taking my favorite highlighter, which is a very intense highlighter. As you can see, this is Rodeo Drive from Ofra, and I'm keeping it right on my cheekbones. I'm putting a little bit on the forehead, but I'm keeping it really nice. Right here, I'm blending it out a lot. I can get a blinding highlight without it being too ba-bam in your face. You can make it blinding, but you can also make it look really pretty. If you want it to be even more blinding than that, you could take something like a lighter shade, even a white. And as long as you blend it out and keep it very small, that can totally work. But if you just take these lighter shades, say you want a really blinding highlight, you don't tap it off, and then you just go in a stripey motion like this, this is just not a flattering look, my friend, I can tell you right now. So I'm going to take a little bit of highlighter that I used on my face, and I'm going to apply that to my inner corners and on my brow bone. As you can see, it's really pretty. But on this side, I'm going to be taking a shade that's way too light and too intense. And I'm going to just kind of stripe it on here. And I'm going to take a really bright shade and put this right in the inner corner right here, kind of blending it up and blending it down. For your lower lash line, I like to keep it very simple and use the brown shades that we used on the top of our eyes on the bottom, but I like to really blend it out and use a nice small precise brush so we don't do anything too intense. But as always, I see people taking that black and just keeping it really close, not blending it out. So last but not least, on this side of my face, I used a setting spray. And I would typically use a long lasting setting spray, but because I'm going to be taking this makeup off, I don't really find it necessary to do that, so I'm just going to use my Mario Badescu facial spray. I'm also going to use a sponge to press it into the skin. This is going to make all the powders look nice and natural. And on this side, I'm just not going to use a setting spray because who needs setting sprays? For the lower lashes, I'm going to keep it very natural, just like so. But on this side, I'm just gonna really just, I want those big lashes, so I'm just gonna apply it. For lips, I'm going to wipe off that lip balm that we applied earlier, and I'm going to take a lip liner and lightly apply this to my lips and then fill it in. And I do want some new lips, so I'm going to take it and then I'm just going to apply it. On this side though, we're just gonna go for it. Okay you guys, so we finally have reached the end of this video. Here is the do side, here is the don't side. Vote for which one you like better. As you can see, obviously you don't see too many people looking just like this with all of these elements combined, but I guarantee you that you have seen one person or so look like one of the elements in this. All combined, you don't necessarily see them all that often, but I just wanted to do this video to give you guys kind of an update on this, show you some more tips and tricks that I've learned, and just kind of show you some tips and tricks that you might want to use. So that's it for this video, you guys. I hope you guys like it. I hope you found it helpful. Please let me know what you thought in the comments below. Give it a big thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. And I will see you in my next video. Mwah. Bye. It's delicious.